Good evening, bonsoir. As Minister of National Defence, my top priority is the safety and protection of Canadians. Working in collaboration with our partners, including the United States, NORAD, and other departments, Canada was tracking a high-altitude object over central Yukon. North American Aerospace Defense Command detected this object and launched Canadian and U.S. fighter aircraft to investigate. The object was visually identified using fighter aircraft assigned to NORAD. En collaboration avec nos partenaires, dont les États-Unis, le NORAD et d'autres départements, le Canada suivait un objet à haute altitude au-dessus du centre du Yukon. Le commandement de NORAD a détecté cet objet et a lancé des avions de chasse canadiens et américains pour enquêter. L'objet a été identifié visuellement à l'aide d'avions de chasse affectés au NORAD. This exemplifies what NORAD is and what NORAD does best, and I was pleased to discuss this operation earlier today with my colleague, United States Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. Today, at the direction of the Prime Minister, aircraft assigned to NORAD successfully took down this high-altitude airborne object at approximately 3:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Aujourd'hui, à la demande du Premier ministre, des avions affectés au NORAD ont abattu cet objet aérien de haute altitude vers 15h40, heure normale de l'Est. To the best of our knowledge, this was the first time that a NORAD operation has downed an aerial object. The object was flying at an altitude of approximately 40,000 feet, had unlawfully entered Canadian airspace, and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. The object was downed approximately 100 miles from the Canada-United States border over Canadian territory in central Yukon. L'objet volé à une altitude de 40 000 pieds avait pénétré illégalement dans l'espace aérien canadien et constituait une menace raisonnable pour la sécurité des vols civils. L'objet était abattu à environ 100 000 de la frontière canado-américaine au-dessus du territoire canadien au Yukon. Recovery operations are now underway and will be supported by the Canadian Armed Forces in conjunction with the RCMP. This coordinated operation will allow a further investigation into this object. We have no further details about the object at this time, other than it appears to be a small cylindrical object and smaller than the one that was downed off the coast of North Carolina. I also spoke today with Yukon Premier Ranj Pillay and conveyed that we will continue to work hand in hand with the territory. I and our government will continue to reach out to Indigenous peoples potentially affected by this incident to provide information and updates as needed out of respect for reconciliation. Today is an historic day. Canada and the United States will continue to work together through the binational command of NORAD to defend our two nations. And I will recognize again the importance of this extremely close relationship that we have with the United States. Le Canada et les États-Unis continuent de travailler ensemble par le biais du commandement binational du NORAD pour défendre nos deux nations. Et je reconnaîtrai encore une fois l'importance de cette relation extrêmement étroite que nous avons avec les États-Unis. Just yesterday, I was in the United States meeting with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon, where we reaffirmed that North American air sovereignty is a key priority, which is why we continue to work in partnership with the United States, NORAD, and the broader security community to protect Canadian and U.S. interests. We will continue our work to modernize NORAD and to ensure the protection of our air sovereignty. And I will be seeing Secretary Austin again next week. Through NORAD, we will continue to work hand in hand with our closest ally to ensure the protection of our continent, as we showed today. I thank all members of our military and the United States involved in this operation. Grâce au NORAD, nous allons continuer à travailler étroitement avec notre allié le plus proche pour assurer la protection de notre continent, comme nous l'avons montré aujourd'hui. Je remercie tous les membres de notre armée et celles des États-Unis qui ont participé à cette opération. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. Maintenant, nous pouvons recevoir vos questions aussi.
Good day, Minister.
How are you?
This is the third such an incident in this past week. This object was down because there was considered a threat to safety. Should Canadians be worried? And my following question is anything being done to monitor our airspace as a result?
Let me assure all Canadians that Canadians are safe. There is no reason to believe that the impact of the object in Canadian territory is of any public concern. The Canadian Armed Forces with the RCMP will recover and will analyze the object. And in terms of tracking and a process going forward, I want to assure all Canadians that this is the job of NORAD. This is exactly what NORAD was intended to do, and this is exactly what we saw today occurring. The surveillance and the analysis of objects of concern in our aerospace, and then decisions that are made binationally, and in this instance by our Prime Minister, to take this object down. So the process is sound, and we will continue to work very closely with our U.S. allies and NORAD to make sure that it continues to work in this way. As I said, to our knowledge, this is the first instance of NORAD downing an object in Canadian airspace, and the importance of this moment should not be underestimated. We detected this object together, and we defeated this object together.
Do you think, or your counterparts in the U.S., do you think that it possibly could have originated in China?
At this point, we are continuing to do the analysis on the objects, and we will make sure that that analysis is thorough. And so it would not be prudent for me to speculate on the origins of the object at this time. However, I will say that we are continuing to work closely with our NORAD partners and our U.S. partners, and we will make sure that we leave no stone unturned in the analysis of the data that we are now going to be turning to analyze.
Just want to get some clarity. I know you mentioned that it was downed with by U.S. and Canadian fighter jets. Is that correct? Is that my understanding? Because I thought it might just be U.S. fighter jets.
So these assets that were deployed were part of the NORAD capabilities, and they included 2 F-22s from the United States and 2 F-18s from Canada. We also have a CP-140 in the air to pinpoint the location of the debris and to assist with the next steps in the analysis and evaluation. But as I said, this was a joint operation. The decision to take down the object was made by the Prime Minister. He spoke with the President of the United States this afternoon. I also spoke with my counterpart, Secretary Austin, to ensure that we were all aligned, and indeed we were, on the need to have a successful engagement and indeed to employ NORAD to do exactly what it is intended to do.
I know you mentioned that it's too early to say, obviously, where this object is from. That's part of your investigation in terms of analyzing it. If it is found to have originated in China, what do you think the potential impact could be with regards to our diplomatic relations? I think it's fair to say they've been rocky.
So again, I will not be speculating on the origins of this object this evening. It is far too early in our analysis of the debris, as we are still collecting. We're working to collect it, as I said, in conjunction with the RCMP. So that's the first point. The second point is that in our Indo-Pacific strategy, released late last year, we did indicate that we need to be eyes wide open on China. And we will continue to do that through the policy framework of the Indo-Pacific strategy, but also, again, in conjunction with our allies in support of a transparent and present Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, my final question to you, thank you for being so patient. Last week, the U.S. shot down one of these balloons. They said they called it a Chinese surveillance balloon. China pushed back, saying it was a weather balloon. What is Canada's position?
This is an object. This is a cylindrical object that we shot down today. It appears to be a cylindrical object. And we are working to analyze the debris to identify more specifics about this object. It appears to be smaller in size than the one that the United States shot down off the coast of North Carolina last week. But at this point, that is the information that I can share.
Thank you. And is there anything else that you'd like to add that you think is important for Canadians to know tonight?
I think the importance of today's successful mission underscores the functionality of NORAD, the only binational command in the world that has kept us safe for 40 years or more. And our government announced last year that we will be modernizing and upgrading our continental defense, including NORAD. That's going to include constructing a new surveillance system called the Northern Approaches Surveillance System. That's going to include enhancing command and control. That's going to include ensuring greater research and development in this area. So this goes to show that NORAD is functioning as it should, and we recognize the need to enhance the technology that underpins aerospace surveillance.
Thanks, Minister, and we'll take another question to follow up. As a reminder, please unmute yourself if you're on the line using *6. Do we have any further questions from media? Est-ce qu'on a d'autres questions des médias?
Yeah, I have a question. Steve Chase.
Go ahead,
Please
Steve.
go ahead, Steve.
Hi, Minister. The sound has been really bad for the journalists listening on the phone or on Zoom, and so we missed some key information that you gave out because about half the audio was cutting out.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I didn't know that, Steve. So please go ahead and ask your questions, or I can say my whole speech again if you like.
Well, I'll leave it to the rest of the journalists on that. I just wanted to ask you, there was key information. What time was it shot down? Where roughly? Has the wreckage been found? And could you just explain what you said about the shape of the object again and how it compares to the last item shot down?
Okay, here are the details. The object was shot down at approximately 3:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The object was shot down in over central Yukon and at about 40,000 feet. Is that the detail you were looking for, Steve?
Yes, and have you found the wreckage? And can you just describe it again? You talked about something, the shape of it, and you compared it to the previous two items that were shot down in this month.
So we have a CP-140 that is actively pinpointing the site of the debris now. And so that is a process that is underway, given that this was just shot down hours ago. But as I said, it was shot down in central Yukon. So that is the area of reconnaissance that the CP-140 is at. In terms of the description of the object, we believe that the object is cylindrical in shape. It appears to be smaller than the one that was shot down off the coast of North Carolina. We are, as I said, with public safety, recovering the object to discover more details, including the shape and the size of this object. So we will have more details to share in the days to come, but we wanted to share what we know right now, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Minister. We'll take another question from journalists on the line. If you're on the line, please press *6 to unmute. We'll move to the next question now.
This is Lee Berthiaume.
Minister, it's David Coleman. Sorry, Lee, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David. I wanted to ask this, maybe a silly question, but I think it's on, didn't think I'd ever ask this question. Is there any indication that this object is not terrestrial, is not from this world? Or is it too early to say anything on that front?
You're right, I have not had that question, Lee, so thank you for asking it. From all indications, this object is potentially similar to the one that was shot down off the coast of North Carolina, though smaller in size and cylindrical in nature. That is the information that we are working with right now, but with further analysis, we will know more and be able to provide you with more details.
So just to confirm, so it sounds like it potentially was another balloon. Is that what we're being led to believe here?
I will refer to the item as an object at this time. I am a person that depends on facts and will not provide opinions until I can ground them in some sort of facts. So I'm going to wait for the reports that I will be getting relating to the analysis of the debris. We have a CP-140 in the air, ensuring that we are locating the debris. We have a very close relationship now with public safety, and Minister Mendicino as well, and I are working very closely to make sure that the recovery and the analysis proceeds as it must so that we can get more information. And I will come back and provide more details and more explanation once we have that.
Thank you. We'll take the next question.
And Minister Mendicino as well.
Paul Rivera, Wall Street Journal. Why did the U.S. fighters plane shoot this down as opposed to Canadian?
As opposed to separating it out by country, I think what the important point is that these were NORAD capabilities. This was a NORAD mission, and this was NORAD doing what it is supposed to do. And what we wanted to do with the F-22s and the F-18s is to make sure that we had sufficient assets in the air to ensure a successful engagement. And that, in fact, was the tenor of my conversation with the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, this afternoon, as well as my conversation with the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's main goal today was to make sure that we got this object out of the air and that we could analyze it, and that's exactly what happened through the use of NORAD capabilities.
And a follow-up?
Maybe I can just jump in here, Minister. It's David Coleman with CBC News.
Was to make sure that we.
Forgive me if this was in the portion before that we weren't able to hear, but are you able to just give us where did the aircraft launch from? Was it Cold Lake and Elmendorf? What was the weapon system that was used to down this object? Any kind of detail like that?
Sure. We had both U.S. and Canadian assets involved, as I just described, the F-22s and the F-18s, and the F-22s originated in Elmendorf, Richardson, Alaska, and our F-18s from Cold Lake in Alberta. And we'll have to recognize that there are contextual elements in the deployment of aircraft in this particular instance that we need to take note of. First of all, visual sighting. When we first started tracking this object, it was dark. And we needed to make sure that we had a visual of it, and so needed to wait for daylight to emerge. Secondly, we needed to make sure that there was infrared or missile lock capability. And that was something that both the F-22s and the F-18 pilots were working on together. So as I said, it was a NORAD mission, it was NORAD capabilities, and our armed forces worked very closely with the U.S. Armed Forces to ensure a successful downing of this object that we had concern about. For more specifics, I will ask the Chief of Defense Staff, General Wayne Eyre, who's with me this evening, if he would like to add anything. General Eyre?
No, thanks, Minister. And David, to go to the specifics of your question, it was an AIM-9X missile from the F-22. Now, it's important to note that the instructions that were given to the team was whoever had the first best shot to take out the balloon had the go-ahead. It's also important to note that all the aircraft were under the direction of Canadian NORAD region. So a Canadian general in Winnipeg was overseeing this operation, albeit in a NORAD context. You know, I've had multiple conversations with my U.S. counterpart, General Mark Milley, today, as well as numerous briefings from Commander and Deputy Commander of NORAD down in Colorado Springs to discuss all aspects of this operation.
Thank you. We'll take the next question. La prochaine question, s'il vous plaît.
Hi, this is Cormac McSwinney with City News. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The Liberal Party website has that the Prime Minister was scheduled to be holding a fundraising event in Yukon this weekend. I believe it's supposed to be held tomorrow. Is there any belief from the government that this object flying over Yukon and the Prime Minister's presence in Yukon at the same time is a coincidence? Is there some relation there?
I am aware that the scheduled fundraiser is on the books, and indeed I spoke with the Member of Parliament from Yukon, my dear friend Brendan, about this, who's looking forward to receiving the Prime Minister. We are not tracking at this point information relating to the object. Frankly, we were concerned to get it out of the sky, and that was our focus all day. Indeed, in the past 24 hours. And so any further information will come with the analysis that we are doing regarding the debris.
And in terms of the analyzing of the wreckage. The U.S. is analyzing its wreckage and we'll be analyzing ours. I assume we'll be sharing information between both governments, but will this go beyond just the U.S. and Canada? What other countries might be involved in examining this, getting the intelligence around this? I assume the Five Eyes allies, but if you could confirm that for us as well.
Well, this is, of course, an issue of concern to both Canada and the United States, and the analysis of the debris and the information relating to that analysis will, I am sure, be shared amongst all parties concerned, NORAD, the relevant players in both the Canadian and the U.S. government. So there's excellent cooperation amongst us all now, and this will continue. As I said, we continue to reiterate the importance of our collaboration relating to the protection of the skies over the North American continent, and that's exactly what we are going to continue to do. In terms of the broader information sharing possibility, I will say that we work extremely closely with our Five Eyes allies, and we certainly have been doing so over the past year especially. And I will say that I will be at the Defense Ministers meeting in Brussels next week, and we will continue to share information with our allies as necessary, again, to ensure that we have accurate information and that we are doing whatever we can in the protection of our allies more generally.
Thank you, and we'll take a final question now from the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Thank you.
If nobody else.
Minister Anand, News Nation in D.C., you mentioned that we were waiting for daylight for sighting and for infrared missile lock capability. Was that daylight not sufficient enough to allow us to determine whether or not this was a balloon or not?
The importance of the visual sighting and the infrared missile lock, again, as you mentioned and as I mentioned, it's paramount. But the purpose of the mission today was to take down the object. And it wasn't possible to analyze that object at the exact same time. And so we are being extremely prudent and careful relating to the next steps, which is why we're working, the Canadian Armed Forces are working so closely with the RCMP and with public safety to ensure that we extract the debris, that we analyze the debris and any information that may be associated with it. So at this point, we can say that it appears to be a cylindrical object, smaller in size than the object that was shot down off the coast of North Carolina, and further details relating to this object will be forthcoming as soon as we have them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Merci, Madame la Ministre. C'est ce qui ferme notre conférence de presse pour aujourd'hui. This is what ends today's press conference. Thank you, and we will wish everyone a great night.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you.